Okay, good Friday morning, Backyard Naturalist friends. We are in the midst of the holiday season for many different cultures, and I hope you are enjoying this. I'm going to call it glorious with the gray cloud cover because we've learned so much about how cool clouds are on this show in the past. This late December morning. My name is Tim, and I am the host of this week's episode of the Urban Ecology Center's Backyard Naturalist, where we look at the natural history of the things that are commonly found in and around our backyards, our front yards, our homes, our kitchens. This is one of the times of year where we bring in animals and plants. Well, I guess plants from the outside to decorate the insides of our houses. And today we're going to look at a particularly interesting, in my opinion, plant that some people like to put outside or inside their homes. And it's a plant that has made its way into our songs and verses. It brings shininess and color wherever it goes. So please, I hope you will enjoy this episode 17 of season 5 of the Backyard Naturalist, Mistletoe Command. And like I said, I do apologize. I'm still trying to figure out these Google Sheets, so you'll have to bear with my cursory attempt at cover slide design until I figure it out a little bit more. But this is a nod to the golden era of video games, one of my favorite Atari games, Missile Command. So if you're part of my generation, you know this. Um, Thank you for watching today. We are very glad you are here. And of course, a special thank you to the community of subscribers joining us here today. Your subscription keeps this program going and is a great way to support the Urban Ecology Center. If you're looking for last minute gifts, and I can't think of I can't think of a better one than a gift subscription to this program so that your friends and family can come on this platform and hang out with us for 1 hour every week. And they can join us for next week's episode, which doesn't have a host because we're all going to be the hosts. Basically, we're turning our screens on and then hanging out for an end of the year open mic session to wrap up 2023, the year that was. We'd love to hear your stories, your photos, your videos, your questions, your jokes, your poems, or just bring yourself and we'll turn on the proverbial microphone to basically hang out and share stories for an hour. So I'm really looking forward to spending the time with whoever shows up that morning. And here's another gift you could give someone. You can bring them on an adventure that they will never forget. We still have four spaces left on the Urban Ecology Center's Eco Travel excursion to the magical islands of the Galapagos off the coast of Ecuador, with an extension down to Mindo, up to Mindo in the Andes Mountains. We go from hot to cold, and boy, the biodiversity we see is amazing. Some of the most iconic wildlife the world has to offer up close and personal in this magical place. So details on this, visit the UEC's website or just talk to me. I love to talk. And also don't forget that next August, the UEC is taking a fully accessible trip to Costa Rica, another magical place. We're partnering with Il Viaggio, a company that specializes in accessible tourism in one of my favorite places in the world. Oh, and happy solstice. So the solstice does have a specific time. It's not a day. The solstice occurred at 9:27 p.m. last night. So for the next 6 months, the amount of daylight is going to continue to increase every day until June, when it finally starts to warm up again in Milwaukee. And then we can look forward to the days getting shorter. So happy solstice. And it's been really fun to hear from you all that you've been able to get out and see all these meteor showers. This has been a really good stretch for meteor showers the last month or so. And it makes me happy to hear that you all have been witnessing this fantastic shooting star viewing session, and the conditions have just been great. So we're nearing the end of this special stretch. If you notice, the moon's getting brighter, and but there still are opportunities. So the Geminids, which maybe produce the most spectacular show this year, is just about done, but you can still get out over the next couple days or nights. They're well past the peak, but they're not over yet. But another meteor shower is at its peak. So tonight, in fact, is the peak for the Ursid meteor shower, named after Ursa Minor, the Little Dipper, from which they appear to emanate in the night sky. And again, the moon's getting brighter, but the party isn't over. If you have a chance to get out and view tonight and over the next few days, definitely give it a try if these clouds decide to let us. Today we're talking about mistletoe. Mistletoe actually refers to a large group of plants. There are thousands of species of mistletoe. And so when we think of mistletoe, it probably depends on, our culture, our upbringing, um, from a Western holiday tradition, and often from other cultures. There is a specific species of mistletoe plant that or many refer to, uh, but like I said, it's a really big group. So if we kind of look at what mistletoe is, well, it's a plant. It's a vascular plant, meaning it has xylem and phloem. Most of them are woody. It's a flowering plant or an angiosperm, and then those flowers produce those lovely berries that make them great as decoration. Um, and then to get a better sense of what kind of flowering plant mistletoe is, we'll go to this major and really fun group, a clade of plants called the eudicots. And we've been to the eudicot group before. In fact, my favorite culinary plant, the maple tree, is also a eudicot. If you see little maple seeds popping out of the soil, you see the little two leaves, um, because the eudicots are a specific type of dicot. So a couple weeks ago, we looked at ginger, which is a monocot with one embryonic leaf, and the dicots have two embryonic leaves upon germination. And then the eudicots are a specific, more specialized and recent branch of the dicots. And there are a lot of just fantastic plants in this group. A lot of future episodes bunched into this group along with the maples. Um, so mistletoe is related to such iconic plants as the sunflower, the dandelion, the forget-me-nots, that carpet plum lake up in northern Wisconsin, the expensively delicious macadamia nuts, the apple, the pantry staple, the maple, my favorite, and the buttercup flower is also a eudicot. And then we have cabbage, because who can have a bratwurst without sauerkraut? And a couple of wise men once taught me that cabbage rolls and coffee are good. And then one branch of the Eudicots brings us to a group called the Santa. Of course, this Christmas favorite is named after Santa. It's actually named after a type of genus called sandalwood, but Santa is a little easier to remember. This order is heavily associated with the group of plants that we call mistletoe. So pretty much every mistletoe is in this group. And like there are many different species that we call mistletoe. And when we cut through the kind of warm, fuzzy, and bright feeling that we try to instill when we decorate with mistletoe, I don't, when people do. From an ecological perspective, mistletoes are parasites. They are plant parasites. So we might like mistletoe the same way a cacao plant or a chocolate plant likes mosquitoes. We hate mosquitoes. The chocolate plant likes them. We might like mistletoe, but to other plants, mistletoe can be a royal pain in the grass because they are these parasitic plants, usually not fully parasitic. In fact, they're a kind of a special group called hemiparasites. So, for example, you might have heard of that we have air plants that are epiphytes. You also have hemiepiphytes, which are kind of half air plants. So these are not fully parasitic, they're hemiparasitic or part parasitic. And this is because most of them can photosynthesize on their own. They don't need the plant for photosynthesis, but they do need to tap into the stems or the roots of these plants for water and other very important nutrients. So they need the plant for a lot of things and just not everything. There are some species that have gone pretty far. They can even barely photosynthesize on their own, which would be considered almost complete parasites, because they need everything from their host to survive and thrive. But for the most part, this is a group of hemiparasites. So many different species when we talk about mistletoe. The family is Stantalaceae, and the genus is Viscum. And so Santalacea and has all of these mistletoe, and then Viscum, this genus, has another 100 species of mistletoe. So again, there's thousands of species, but the Viscum comes from the root word viscus, um, because there is the berries. One thing we'll learn about the berries is they're very sticky, very and viscous, and uh, that's an important part of their biology. Um, and humans have made a very sticky adhesive from the berries of mistletoe, as we kind of start to peel back these layers of bright, cheery images and kind of get to the dark side of these plants. Because then humans in the past have used that viscous stickiness in berries to make a sticky bird lime, which they will put on twigs, or other perches when where birds are known to perch. And then if birds land on these twigs, unfortunately, they're stuck there. It's kind of like a sticky mouse trap. And then the birds it's like trapping, but they're using the sticky, viscous part of the mistletoe berry to trap birds, and then usually they're used for food. It's the practice has been made illegal in some parts of the world, um, and sometimes it's gone a little back and forth. But there are still some areas in the world where it is a common and legal way to catch birds for consumption. Um, and it's an unfortunate, but again, that's also a more complex system in how humans have hunted all animals over the past. So yeah, it kind of takes your bright and cheery Christmas songs a little bit, and those songs don't mention some of this carnage. Uh, but as we move forward here, the mistletoe as a plant is often very easy to spot. Um, it's kind of looking for what part of this tree looks, different from the other parts of the tree. So particularly if the tree has gone dormant in the winter or the dry season, and you still have these blotches of mistletoe that are going to remain green well after the host tree has dropped its leaves. So this is a mistletoe that's parasitizing a poplar tree, continuing to photosynthesize, um, but also, at the same time, still tapping into the host for minerals and water. Or you just kind of notice that a tree has these blotches of differently colored leaves. This is a tree in a farm in Amsterdam where the European mistletoe, the Christmas mistletoe, is native. And then obviously you can pretty quickly pick out the mistletoe blotches. It's a little bit like Where's Waldo, but you're looking for, small patches in trees that look different. Maybe the slightly different color, slightly different shape, flowers, berries, that are different from the host trees, flowers, or berries. So kind of like walking through a forest here in Wisconsin, and you see, a patch of invasive species, and they're invasive because everything else has long gone dormant, but this invasive species is still green. It's one of the reasons they're invasive. And there's some exceptions to that rule, of course, but some mistletoe species are specific to single host species, and others are generalist that can parasitize many different species or other groups of trees. The flowers themselves tend to be pretty inconspicuous. So when we're decorating with mistletoe, it's usually not the flowers that we're highlighting. The flowers are most often insect pollinated, but then these flowers, of course, produce these bright and cheery mistletoe berries, which can be, depending on the species, white, yellow, orange, red, usually very bright, very waxy, very kind of, uh, in your face, bright. And in each berry, there is either one seed or several seeds. And again, if you pop open that little fruit, it's got a very, very sticky matrix. And this is where the mistletoe plant takes a really interesting turn in its biology. So a lot of plants, I think we're most familiar with berries on trees. And the story is, after the flowers are pollinated and they become fruit, then a tactic that many of our local plants or plants around the world have taken is that they make these brightly colored berries that attract birds or humans or others, and then the birds will fly away with the berries and either poop out or spit out or otherwise drop the seed. so that the seed lands on the ground. And if it's in poop, it's got all the fertilizer around it. And then that's a way of dispersing to new areas away from the parent tree. So we saw this in the serviceberry episode, among others. But the mistletoe takes this kind of general theme, but puts a new twist to it. So still has these brightly covered berries, but because they're a hemiparasite, they actually don't want those seeds to end up on the ground, because then it's kind of like barren to the mistletoe. So what they need is that seed to end up basically in a tree, so it can parasitize a new tree. So again, it takes that plan of brightly colored berries. Here you have a cedar waxwing and a serviceberry, cedar waxwing and a mistletoe. And a lot of different kinds of birds eat mistletoe berries. They're very important. There is one bird in particular that is targeted most often in the Old World mistletoe, and that is the appropriately named mistle thrush. In fact, both the common name and the Latin name are good descriptors of what this bird does. So this is the part where we need Tori. So missile is Old English, and it basically means poop. Toe also comes from Old English, and it means branch. So essentially, mistletoe means poop on a branch, for reasons we're about to explore. But essentially, people saw bird poop turn into mistletoe, and so they named the plant after the bird poop. So speaking of poop, Turdus is a genus of thrushes that includes our American robin, Turdus migratorius, and Viscovorum translates to devourer of mistletoe. So viscum, we just learned, is the genus name of the plant because of its viscosity or stickiness. And vorare is Latin for devourer, like those of us who have a voracious appetite. So the Latin name for the mistle thrush means the devourer of mistletoe, which means poop on a stick. But this bird was named after that because of its penchant for eating mistletoe berries. Unlike its cousin, the robin, who will again take that berry, fly away, and poop out the seed, the mistle thrush will grab a berry, fly away, and then it tries to eat the pulp of the fruit. So it kind of mashes it up. It doesn't really want the seed. And because the pulp is so sticky, then the seed probably just embarrassingly ends up on its face somewhere. So it uses its beak to kind of wipe off the seed onto a branch. And when it does that, there you go. Voila. The mistletoe seed has now ended up in a place where it wants to be. The bird eats the berry pulp, gets that yummy meal, leaves the seed stuck to the branch, and then the mistletoe can grow up into the parasite it was meant to be. In a short period of time, the seeds are stuck to the branch, so they'll germinate while glued to the branch. And I love this picture because you can not only see the seed germinating, not in soil like where we normally see, but attached to the branch. But then you also get a good look at the dicotyledon seed, the two embryonic leaves that come out of the seed. So if you go back to this farm tree in the Netherlands, each one of those little mistletoe blotches represents likely a place where a mistle thrush perched, had a mistletoe snack, and left that seed stuck on the branch. And then as the seed germinates and grows, it sends out basically these invasive structures that go into the wood. They penetrate the woody tissue of the tree, and then they start to tap into the xylem and phloem of the tree. And interestingly, the mistletoe itself is also a woody plant. And so if you examine these they're called hostorium, that kind of go into the tree, you will see growth rings in the hostorium of the mistletoe, just like you do in the trees. So you can count the growth rings that you see in the mistletoe, and you can see when it invaded the tree. And then you could also, for good measure, count the growth rings on the branch that it parasitized to find out how big the branch was when the bird left the seed there. And this is good time for a little PSA reminder that while birds love the berries, and they're very good for the birds, mistletoe berries pretty much across the board are extremely toxic to humans. Not to a lot of animals, but to humans in particular. So they cause intense gastrointestinal distress, stomach pains, diarrhea. It weakens the pulse. It inhibits your body from synthesizing proteins by deactivating the ribosomes in your cells. So because of these symptoms, there's a lot of people studying it for medicinal properties, but please don't eat them, and please keep them away from humans that might eat them because they're just not good. The species of mistletoe that's associated with the holiday season, not just in Christian cultures but in others, is Viscum album, and that is known as the European mistletoe, or the common mistletoe, or when Nat King Cole is singing, this is the mistletoe he's referring to in the Christmas song. Native to Europe, native to Western and Southern Asia. Also found as an introduced species here in North America. With the European mistletoe, there's usually just one seed per berry, and the mistletoe berries are usually white, kind of that shiny, glossy white, sometimes with a little yellow. Album from Viscum album comes from the Latin albus, which means white, from which we also derive the term albino or albinism. And because this is a sought after tree by humans, there are many, many, many varieties, subspecies, strains that you can find at your local garden store, because it has been bred by humans for the decorative qualities. The thrushes that eat the European mistletoe usually deposit the seeds in apple trees, in linden trees, hawthorn, poplar trees. And I know I kind of mentioned it's kind of like doing a Where's Waldo to find the mistletoe patches, but the difficulty level is usually not that hard. So these are all pictures taken in the native range of the European mistletoe. I do feel there's a fact I need to mention that you can feel free to immediately forget. But this species, the European mistletoe, is the only multicellular organism on the planet that we know of that does not have a functioning respiratory complex 1 in its electron transport chain. So if you want a story to impress your friends or grandkids, you can go ahead and tell them that. But don't ask me to repeat it because I've already forgotten what I said. But essentially, it borrows the most basic functions of growth and metabolism from the host tree, including things like ATP that we learned about in biology class for metabolism. So in most cases, the tree that is parasitized will still live and grow. The mistletoe is, depending on factors, I'm sure the trees don't appreciate it, don't like it. But for the most part, and then they will be stunted in their growth. They're losing nutrients to the parasites. It is possible if a particular tree becomes too popular from the mistletoe that the host will be killed. But the mistletoe is actually depending on that tree for life, just like with human parasites. Typically, they don't kill you. They want you alive enough to be able to suck the life out of you and keep you alive while doing it. So it wouldn't be good for the mistletoe if they killed their host tree, but sometimes it does happen. And we'll talk a little bit about their association with humans, and admitting there's a strong Western bias to the information, but even though many associate mistletoe with the holidays right now, humans living in Europe and Western Southern Asia, where the plant is native, have had a long relationship, pre-Christian. From what we know of, based on what we can see and who we listen to, mistletoe was often seen as a representation of it. The first instance that we know of is that it was a representation of the divine male essence, which to those people was associated with romance, fertility, and vitality. It is featured prominently in Greek mythology. It's the golden bough that allows access to the underworld. It's the Romans that began the association with peace and love and understanding. And they're the ones that also begin the practice of bringing mistletoe inside the house to hang over doorways and protect the household. So the older version of the lucky horseshoe. And then later the Celts started the tradition of using it medicinally, mainly on animals who were able to ingest it, not with humans. It was also used as a sacred object in Druid rituals, and in this Asterix comic, the Druid character Gataflix is collecting mistletoe with a golden sickle, which was something that occurred in Celtic ritual sacrifices and banquets, where a Druid dressed in white would climb an oak tree with a golden sickle to collect mistletoe. I've never read Asterix. I think maybe I did a long time ago, but if you have, hopefully this provides you with a little bit more color and understanding of the comic. And in Norse mythology, mistletoe also features prominently, particularly in a story where Loki is able to use trickery to kill his rival Balder with mistletoe, which is the only object in the world that can harm him. And then Christianity in Europe kind of put their own spin on mistletoe, and it became a popular Christmas decoration while maintaining some of the aspects of protection and romance. And the kissing, which is fine in my opinion, as long as everything is consensual. As important as this was culturally in Europe in particular, um, I'm a bit surprised the European mistletoe didn't come over, you know, and completely take over the Americas as an invasive species. There's probably a couple of reasons for this. The most likely is that it just didn't take super well and spread like, a lot of invasive species do. But another, likely story is that, or reason is that both botanically and culturally, there is a native species of mistletoe that seemed to be happily incorporated into the cultures that forcibly colonized this area. So Phorandendron leucarpum, or the American mistletoe, is a native species of mistletoe found mainly in the South and West. And that was adapted into the customs, Christian, Druid, and otherwise. It is in a different genus, but still in the mistletoe family. And so ecologically, it's very similar in how it's dispersed by birds with the stickiness. It's a parasite. These nice decorative berries are still very toxic to humans. So really, there wasn't much of a need to bring over mistletoe since there was this American species that functioned almost exactly the same as the European mistletoe. Quick note, there is another holiday plant that is maybe even more recognizable in these parts, and that's the holly plant. And it's easy to conflate or confuse mistletoe and holly. Both are used as holiday decorations. The two plants are very different from each other. And if you'd like to find out why, there's an episode, Along Came Holly, that we did around this time a few years ago. And in this old Christmas card, the two are conflated, but you can see how different the two plants are. Only one of them is a hemiparasite. Only one was used to make Harry Potter's wand, but both of them contain these highly toxic berries. So it's just a good practice in general to not eat colorful berries that are still around this time of year, unless you know exactly what you're eating. So that's mistletoe, also known as poop on a stick. It's never been an important part of my holiday traditions. I'd like to think that's because we just knew of all the dark sides of mistletoe. I mean, it's a sap-sucking parasite. It's used to kill birds in a cruel way. It can easily kill humans. I don't fault the plant for that. The plant is brilliant. Especially if you take away this dark side that mostly comes from humans. This is an extremely well adapted plant, a really interesting adaptations to survive and thrive. They are very important to their native ecosystems. So I think mistletoe is awesome. I just don't want to bring them into my house. I think tigers are awesome, but I don't want to bring them into my house either. So, um, but it is part of humanity. Um, but that's the story of mistletoe I have to share. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Don't forget to bring your stories to next week's Backyard Naturalist, and we'll see you next Friday. I will stop sharing my screen.